In the next two clips, you will see some of the vodcasts that we have produced.
So there we've just talked about the relationship between students and teachers as perceived through an understanding of rights and duties. And a way to move forward there would be think about listing what teachers perceive are their duties to their students, what they perceive are their rights as teachers, and having students think also about their duties and rights.
The model has two dimensions, agency and communion. Steering, friendly, understanding, imposing, confrontational, satisfied, and uncertain. So these are two dimensions.
Could say is that on the agency dimension, high agency dimension elicits low agency responses and vice versa. But on the communion dimension, you see a sort of a similarity. So friendly behavior invites a friendly reaction and vice versa. And high agency behavior invites low agency behavior.
Celia talks about what we found.
And the visually impaired student had his diagram enlarged so that he could see it, and he also had his own teaching assistant. The rest of the class had the original material. Their diagrams were in 2 rows of 4 moons, and they could see a pattern between the 2 rows. Unfortunately, the enlarged diagram had 3 rows of 2 or 3 moons, so there was no pattern. The teaching assistant also told me that this was her least favourite subject, so she said that she wasn't able to explain to him about the phases of the moon because she didn't understand it herself. So whilst the teacher was going around the classroom helping all the other students who were struggling, the teacher assumed that the teaching assistant was dealing with the visually impaired student and that they were fine. Another example. In school, they were looking at the universe. They would be split into pairs of students, mark dots on the balloon, measure the distances between those dots, and then blow up the balloon and measure the distances again. With the visually impaired student, he was with a teaching assistant who did all of that for him. So the student sat there and listened to her description of what she did and what she saw. So the student's learning was based on what the teaching assistant told him of what she saw and did, whereas all the
So far we've considered now the rights and duties of the teacher, rights and duties of students, which is what we call in positioning theory the position that people have taken up. And we've also now considered that what people perceive as their duty or their right influences what they do and say. So if you are a student at a particular school, then there's a particular way of behaving, there's different things that you value, there's particular things you believe in. So they're what we call the storylines, and they're propagated in stories about the institution, and they're propagated in how we talk about our rights and how we perceive our duties.
It's good to be in the upper right part of the model. You should be high on steering, friendly and understanding. That means, and low on confrontational, unsatisfied and uncertain. Okay, then they say the behavior should be high on that and low on that. That is not always the case.
Hopefully I've given you an idea as to why it's so important to assess an individual, to establish what it is you're trying to get across, and it's important not just to the visually impaired student but as a whole.